Hi everyone! Welcome back to the StationForge channel. In today's episode, we'll be doing a speed painting of this GrimGuard. We'll paint it quickly and efficiently, but without losing any details, ensuring it fits perfectly with the rest of the army. Join me and let's get started. For the base, I'll use some textured paint. The brand and color don't matter. We'll also need a bit of Razorwire from Army Painter, and 2 pigments from Vallejo, burnt umber and dark yellow ochre. I'll paint the uniform with dark sea blue from Vallejo and mix it with white to add some volume. For the leathers, I'll use 2 colors, leather brown from Vallejo for the pouches and belt, and Ixto 88 from Citadel for the mask and a few other details. For the metals, I'll use Retributor armor from Citadel, black metal, and chrome from Vallejo Model Air. Then, I'll add some washes with Nuln Oil from Citadel, wood brown from Ocher, and burnt Siena from SCHMINCKE. I'll use Jade green for the mask lenses, and finally, a bit of gloss varnish. Remember, these colors are just a guide. The important thing is the tone, the feel, and the finish. You don't need to use exactly the same paints. Just use what you have at home that looks similar. It's a good idea to place the figure slightly behind the center of the base. This way, the front is free to add other interesting elements, giving more detail to the base and enhancing the overall look of our army. I apply any kind of textured paint on the base. The color or brand doesn't really matter. I put on enough so I can add rocks or Razorwire later, making sure it holds up just with the textured paint. I cut about 1 inch of Razorwire and use the brush to shape it. I just wrap it around the brush and press it a bit with my fingers, so it looks like barbed wire laid out in a trench. Then I place it on the base using the textured paint as glue. After the textured paint dries, with a black spray I do quick passes, making sure the entire figure is primed. Watch the distance. About a hand's width is enough. I'll start by applying a slightly thinned base coat of dark sea blue on the uniform. You might need a second pass to get full coverage. If I don't thin the paint and try to cover in one go, it'll likely clog up the miniature and lose too many details. That's why I prefer to do 2 thin layers. I didn't use an airbrush for this base coat because I want to take advantage of the black primer to give more depth and contrast to the silver metallics. Now I'm starting the part that will take the most time, creating the uniform. To do this, I'll add some white to the dark sea blue base coat to lighten it up. I'll apply it to the raised areas of the uniform. What does that mean? I'll paint the parts of the uniform that are facing upwards, like they're being lit from above, leaving the downward-facing parts in shadow. This will help define the folds and creases in the uniform, making them look clear and natural. This mini has a particularly well-sculpted uniform, so it's easy to see the shape of the fabric. Just make zigzag or Z-shaped strokes. Watch how I handle the lower part of the uniform. With the brush, I draw the folds and creases on the lower part, even if they're not sculpted. With just 3 lines, I can make them appear. It's really simple. Give it a try without worrying about mistakes. Later, we'll cover this part with weathering, so we can fix any errors we make now. I can't stress enough how important it is to have a good quality brush. All these strokes and fine lines are possible because my brush holds its point and releases paint very well. Remember, it's more important to invest in a good brush than in paints. We continue with a second highlight by adding more white to the previous mix. I paint over the areas where I think the light will hit the most and where I want to emphasize, like the chest, the arms, and some parts of the lower uniform. As I mentioned earlier, this is the stage that took me the most time, but I assure you it didn't take more than 10 minutes. It's worth adding these highlights because they clearly define the GrimGuard's uniform. We could do it with dry brushing, but we would lose much of the fabric's character and stain areas we want to keep clean. So I recommend doing it with the brush, as it's really quick and adds a lot to the figure. With those two highlights, I'm done with the uniform. Now I'm going to apply a base coat of Vallejo leather brown on the ammo pouches, the belt, and the boots. For the mask, I'm going to use XV88, which is a yellowish brown that will clearly contrast with the reddish brown I used earlier. I don't like figures where all the leathers are the same color because it makes the miniature look artificial. Plus, it's easy to use a different tone of brown. I'll also apply this color to the wooden parts of the rifle and the lower part of the legs. I add a bit of white to Vallejo leather brown to desaturate it and increase the highlight. Then, I apply it quickly but carefully, making sure not to get it on other parts of the figure. For the boots, I use a quick stippling technique to apply the color. I'm going to use Vallejo Model Air's black metal to apply the metallic color on the helmet, the rifle, the mask respirator, the belt, the shoulder pads, and the buttons on the coat. I prefer this metallic paint over Citadel's because of its smoothness and coverage. It's very easy to use and works great as a solid base coat for any silver metal. I add 3 drops of water to 1 drop of wood brown from AK to apply it as a wash on the areas I previously painted yellow-brown. I'm going to apply a generous wash of Citadel's Nuln Oil over all the metallic parts. For now, I want a matte finish. I'll bring back the shine later on. I carefully paint the symbol on the GrimGuard's helmet with Retributor armor. And by diluting red ink with water in a 3:1 ratio, I apply a wash over the gold and reddish-brown areas. Using a strong metallic like Model Air's chrome, I'm going to edge highlight all the metallic elements of the figure with care and precision. From my experience, for this type of quick painting, Vallejo's silver metallics are better than Citadel's. Vallejo's airbrush paint has excellent fluidity and coverage, characteristics that make it very convenient for quick brushwork. Again, I remind you that to further reduce the painting time of an infantry figure like this, you can skip the steps you find unnecessary. This video is just a guide that you should adapt to your particular process. With a worn-out brush and splayed bristles, I'm going to create a texture of combat wear on the character's shoulder pads. I paint a white base coat on the lenses of the GrimGuard's mask. This white will serve as a reflector for the jade green color that I will paint next. Colors applied over a white base gain in potency and intensity because the pigments of the color on top are not dulled and show their true tone more clearly. In this case, the jade green will have a more luminous and prominent appearance thanks to the white base. I generously apply burnt umber all over the base. And take the opportunity to stick a small tuft of green grass. Now, I add a new pigment to the base, dark yellow ochre, which is a fairly earthy yellow. I only apply it to the front part of the figure. By emphasizing this area, I'm highlighting the main view of the miniature even more. I add a few drops of fixer to the pigments. This will not only help prevent the pigment from coming off over time, but also achieve a more compact and less powdery finish, which is ideal for the type of terrain I want to represent for this miniature. Next, I'll use a sponge and Vallejo's leather brown to apply a weathering texture on the lower part of the uniform. This will represent the daily wear and the harsh conditions of battle, including stains and aging. In my opinion, less is more when it comes to weathering. We can always add more details later if needed. Carefully, I add a bit of burnt umber over the previously painted texture to better integrate the miniature with the base. If I notice that I've applied too much pigment, I simply blow to remove the excess. I paint some parts of the Razorwire with chrome silver to maintain the sharp metal look. Finally, I apply gloss varnish on the base to create a wet look on the ground, like mud. I also apply it on some parts of the coat and on the lenses of the mask. This will help draw attention to the miniature's head with the added shine. Well, this is the final result after about 40 minutes of work on this figure. I want to make a final reflection on these fast painting processes. Although the idea is to paint quickly and efficiently, you need to be precise when applying each step. It's better to do it carefully from the start and avoid constantly correcting mistakes. In the long run, this saves time and improves the final result. And with that, we come to the end of this episode. I hope you found it useful and enjoyable. Leave a comment letting us know what you think and what kind of miniatures or techniques you'd like to see in future videos. If you like this miniature, you can find this and many more in our store on My Mini Factory or on our Patreon. Thank you and see you next time.